An open dialogue, better food, and a big smile are just some of the solutions Canadiens management plans on bringing to the team to help them win next year. Can't wait. This is Hockey Inside Out. Welcome to this week's show. I'm Adam Sesser, and here today, joining me in studio with Stu Cowan, CBC Day Breaks, Jessica Rusnak, and from Sportsnet, Eric Engels is back. Here's what we're going to be talking about on today's show. Number 1, what were your takeaways from the Canadiens post-mortem news conference on Monday? Number 2, how do you think the players reacted to the news conference, specifically GM Marc Bergevin's frequent references to attitude problems in the dressing room? Number 3, Canadiens owner Jeff Molson promised next year the team will become more transparent when dealing with fans and the media. How do you see that playing out? Number 4, do you think the fact that Jeff Molson took a more active role in the news conference means that Bergevin will be on a shorter leash next season? And number 5, how much is Carey Price to blame for the team's lack of success this season? Let's start the show. On Monday afternoon's post-mortem press conference, Montreal Canadiens owner Jeff Molson and general manager Marc Bergevin outlined some of the things they plan to work on in order to improve the team for next season. Among them was better communication with the fans and media, a greater customer experience at the Bell Center, and an attitude adjustment among the players. Sorry, but did I just watch a professional sports news conference or a message from my old cell phone provider? Plus, did you see how smiley Jeff Molson was the whole time? What the hell was he smiling about? The whole thing just seemed kind of nuts to me. That's my take on the Canadiens post-mortem press conference. What were some of your takeaways?
I didn't really learn anything, if that's what you're asking. I mean, we had, 4 months to figure out what had gone wrong with this team because it started in October and never got any better. And yeah, there was that little pushback in November. I had developed a theory from the start of the season that when we went to training camp in Brossard, and for years we've been going to training camp in Brossard and you can't even park there. There's so many people there that it's impossible to almost get into the building. There's rows of fans, 10 rows back from the actual glass, where the glassed-in rink. It's that busy. When we showed up at training camp this year, there was maybe 50 people there. Mm-hmm. There was nobody there, and it's because there was no excitement about this team. And if you think that was just the case in the fan base, I think it was clearly the case in the dressing room also. So when Marc Bergevin and Jeff Molson start referencing attitude, that they weren't there from the beginning, it's because hockey players, just like you and me and everybody else, well, maybe people will debate this about me, they're not stupid people. They looked around the room. Within 5 seconds, they recognize who can play and who cannot, to the point where they can also recognize fans think a player's terrible, but he happens to be really good. They got on the ice and after 5 seconds said, yeah, no, Mark straight. This isn't going to work. Ales Hemsky, this isn't going to work. And after getting off to a terrible start in training camp, all the optimism that was there at the golf tournament was pretty much dead. So I think, Monday was an opportunity to confirm all of that, and hearing them reference attitude so many times over and over again, on top of their performance, the players, that was enough for me to think that these guys did not for a second believe that they were going to win anything this year.
And that attitude was created by the general manager. I mean, he's blaming his players for the attitude. He's 6 years on the job. They're his players. He put all those guys in that locker room, except for the exception of maybe 1 or 2 that were there before he got there. And I think you're right, Eric. I think they looked around and said, we're not going to win with these guys. This isn't going to happen. I think that includes Carey Price also. The other thing with that press conference that I take away, they obviously had a strategy meeting before this and said, how are we going to approach this? And they came up with attitude.
Sounds like they didn't have a strategy.
Attitude, transparency, and better food at the Bell Center. And I don't think that's what Canadiens fans wanted to hear. I think they wanted to hear a better plan for what's going to happen going forward.
Well, I found it interesting when Jeff Molson jumped in at one point, maybe halfway through the press conference, and said, yes, attitude is an issue, but our best players didn't play at their highest performance. They weren't their best this season. And I feel like he had to do that because he saw no one was buying this whole attitude thing that they were pushing, saying that it was just the attitude. Yes, it comes down to attitude, but you also need talent. And they don't have talent, and this whole spin that they're trying to put on, didn't fool anyone. The one thing I will give Marc Bergevin is that he admitted that he made a mistake with the defense, that at the golf tournament he said he thought the defense was better than the year prior. Again, didn't fool anyone, and I think there he had to admit that he was a little bit more optimistic.
Yeah, because if he hadn't, people might have suggested that he visit an asylum. But, all things considered, guys, like I know we'll move on to the next topic, like attitude is a nurtured thing. These guys are not a bunch of bad seeds. In 4 months of garbage time hockey, their effort could not be called into question on more than maybe 3 nights. So these are not bad seed, bad attitude players. This was something that was created, like you said, Stu, by the general manager who constructed this team to win the 1998 Stanley Cup. There was never any hope for this team.
So hearing Bergevin blame the players' attitude over and over again during the press conference, how do you think the players reacted to that?
I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall in one of the players' houses or apartments or condos or whatever when they were watching that news conference. I think of like a Brendan Gallagher or Max Pacioretty, the leaders of that team. What are they thinking when they're hearing their general manager basically throw them all under the bus, saying it wasn't my fault, you guys had a bad attitude, that's why we didn't win.
Give me the laugh track from Cheers.
Yeah, but I would have loved that. I would have loved to have seen their reaction if they were watching that news conference, because if we were shaking our heads in the media, I can't imagine what the players must have been thinking listening to attitude. Your attitude's bad. Well, yeah, maybe your attitude's bad because of you. And I would imagine that would be the reaction. They'd never say that. Eric, we kept asking guys at the postmortem, what were your thoughts about starting the season $8 million under the salary cap, and they all sort of had the same answer, right? Well, I'm not a GM. We don't think about that. But I'm sure they were thinking about it.
And I want to, on that point, because I heard from a number of fans on Twitter, why did you keep asking the players that question? What kind of answer did you think it? I don't think sometimes fans realize why we're doing certain things, and maybe we could be a bit more transparent about them. When I'm asking that question to a bunch of the players, I'm expecting them not to throw the general manager under the bus. They're giving me a confirmation that they're accountable, number one, for their actions. They were for 82 games. They took all the heat for what was going on when everybody knew that it was Marc Bergevin who put this team together and did an awful job at doing that and deconstructed the 4th best defense in the league and did nothing to add outside of Jonathan Drouin to the 15th best offense and all those moves that were made at the deadline and everything that happened in the summer. I knew that the players would say that,
it's not their job.
We play, it's not their job, and that proves their accountability. And I was hoping to juxtapose that against what happened in that press conference. And, as a journalist, you always cheer for the best story and for it to come through the way you think it might. And sure enough, it did that day. So it worked out for a good column.
Every once in a while, you get a guy like O'Reilly in Buffalo, though, who speaks the truth. And I'm sure the reporters in Buffalo were blown away with the answer that he had about how Buffalo has a losing attitude. I've lost my love for hockey. This is going to garbage. But you never know when you might get that response.
But what I found was interesting was the players were saying we weren't on the same page. Max Pacioretty used the word, there were warning signs from the beginning of the season that they were all basically saying, everyone knew what was going on from day one and nothing was done to be corrected. And that must be really frustrating for a player, knowing that you do have the potential to fix problems that are occurring on your team.
Well, one of the quotes from Philippe Danault said, we need to buy into Claude Julien's culture right from the beginning next season. And to me, that was one of the quotes I remember from that day, wow, okay, so is there a problem with the players and the coaches also and what he's trying to sell? So I think there's a lot of questions and problems still with that team going into next season.
It also must be really hard to play for a general manager who ultimately is the leader of the team, who deflects the blame time and time again publicly. It trickles down. If you're in any management position, whether it's in business or in sports or anything, the attitude of the leader trickles down. So I feel like that is a big problem.
Well, leaders need to take responsibility. That's part of being a leader. No matter what screws up, you're the guy in charge. It's on you.
And he gives the impression that it's him against the team that he's leading.
But you're making a crucial point in one sense, and the fact is, and Max Pacioretty wanted us to remember that they're human beings. Human beings go to bat for the people that are above them, that they believe in, that have given them hope, that have given them a goal to work towards that is believable. And that did not happen this year, and that's why this pervasive frame of attitude is out there. It's just the these guys are human beings, and anybody could say they make millions of dollars and they should be motivated enough to give it their all. The motivation doesn't come from the money. If anything, it's a demotivator. It's the motivation is what is our hope, what is our belief. Guy Carbonneau said to me a few weeks ago, every year that I was part of the Canadiens, we came to camp feeling as though we had a chance to win. Well, they didn't have that.
Marc Bergevin is also human, and I think it would have been more human of him just to say, I screwed up, I made a lot of mistakes, I've learned from them, and we're going to move forward.
Yeah, he's not that type of human. One of the Jeff Molson talked a lot about the organization becoming more transparent to the fans and the media next year. How do you see that playing out?
I think it's such a dangerous statement to make because living up to it is going to be near impossible. There is the reality that there are things that they cannot divulge, be it from their plan and what they end up going forward with. You know, you can't go out saying, yeah, we're going to chase John Tavares and throw every dollar we have at him, and yeah, we're going to do, because you just can't. You can't say those things. And you also can't, you know, I do agree with the policy of not being completely 100% transparent on injuries. And, you know, as much as we'd like to believe that, yeah, everybody knows already and nobody's really targeting it, like, if somebody knew that Arturi Lekkinen had a back injury, he'd get some cross checks in the back. I mean, it's just, that's a reality. And but I think, you know, there is a certain, when somebody clearly suffers a concussion, yeah, you could be transparent. They're not going to be able to own up to that. I hope they consult some of us in the media on how they can how they can fix some of those issues, because we can help them.
Well, that's just it. I would like to talk more to an assistant coach. They had the rule that you can only talk to the head coach or some of the scouts. And I think you brought up this point that if you trade for a player, maybe talk to some of the scouts. What did you like from this player? Trying to get some different voices around the organization to know who are these people who are advising Marc Bergevin and the other people around to build this team going forward. And even for the media, it would be nice to sometimes have some one-on-one, or if you ask for a player that they're able to do something that's outside the locker room, to get that more of the human interest part of the story. I think that's what a lot of fans want, especially nowadays when it's building, you know, your brand through Instagram. People want to know what you're like on a daily basis.
Well, at the end of that news conference turned into a bit of a gong show, and Marc Bergevin was trying to explain, and he was saying, you know, when a guy has a lower body injury, you know, why can't we just say it's a knee injury? And Arpon Basu said, yeah, why can't you? Like, nobody's stopped them from doing it. They chose to handle it that way. And with the transparency thing, I heard Bergevin on with Mitch Melnick on TSN Radio 690, and I don't know how much he likes this transparency thing, because he got very defensive with some of the questions, and you could tell he was agitated. So I don't know how many more of those he'll be doing and how long this transparency thing will go on. But it's good to see that, you know, the Canadiens, they talk, when we interview players, talk about questions, we're asking questions the fans usually want to know. And I think that the fans pay a lot of money to watch this team, and I think the fans deserve for the team to be straightforward with them, especially the people who are paying big money for season tickets.
Do you think the fact that Jeff Molson was more active and present in the news conference may be a sign that Bergevin will be on a shorter leash next season?
I think the fact they've missed the playoffs 2 out of 3 years is a sign that he's on a shorter leash. I mean, I'm trying to figure out what it is with Jeff Molson season Bergevin from what he's done in the first 6 years to keep him. The only thing I can think of is that he's under contract until 2022, and it's a big contract to eat while you're still paying Michel Therrien not the coach, and then you're going to be paying this guy not to be GM. So I mean, yeah, you have to think he's on a short leash, but I don't know. Like, it's Jeff Molson, whatever.
Oh, you know, if they miss the playoffs next year, he won't be back.
But
it's that simple.
Yeah. I think
this is the foxhole moment. This is the, you know, I'm standing by my guy until he gets, you know, until he. Well,
I think what works in Marc Bergevin's favor is, at the moment, in the market in Montreal, the GM has to be bilingual, and there is not a bilingual guy out there at the moment who is more qualified to take over from Marc Bergevin. That I don't think they want to have another rookie GM come in here. Julien Brisebois' name has popped up quite a bit, but again, he has not been a GM of a team. So I think that kind of helps him, because there's not a direct competition that you could bring in. Would have Michel Therrien been fired at that point last year in February if Claude Julien wasn't fired a week before? I don't know. That's debatable. So I think that if they have someone lined up, things would have been a lot more heat on Bergevin.
I know you asked the questions around here, but I have one to go around this table right now. Before we know anything that these guys are going to do, and we could all assume what they're going to do, if you had to make a bet right now on whether or not they're going to make the playoffs this coming year,
no.
You would say no?
No.
You?
I'm going to say yes.
I'm going to say yes also.
I'm going to say yes.
Why?
I don't think Carey Price will be this bad next year. I think there will be dramatic change that goes on, and I think they will bounce back. And Marc Bergevin will have something to smile about at the end of next year.
You're more optimistic than me. You're like Marc Bergevin. You see the glass half full. That's it. I don't know. I mean, this is such a crucial period for the Canadiens with this draft coming up, the 5 picks in the first 2 rounds, whatever the free agent market is. But if you're a free agent and you see what happened to the Canadiens and you watch that news conference on Monday, do you really want to come here?
Well,
I don't know.
And that's one of the things that when Jeff Molson stepped in and said, about attracting free agents, we are, the most storied franchise in the NHL. They're always talking about the past with this team. What about right now in the present? What can you offer these players?
Better food.
Better food,
Anyways, they're burning the tapes, dude. Don't worry. Nobody's gonna see that.
Better food, but I imagine it's still about $6 for a hot dog. Maybe the hot dog will be better.
Do you see Molson hiring a president of hockey operations in the offseason?
No.
Nope.
No.
Okay.
I think it would be a good idea, but I don't think he will.
But it should be noted on the food thing that Pat Hickey did tell Jeff Molson that the media meal needs to improve.
Oh,
So
that's good.
it's great for us.
So now it's going to be $25.
And for those out there who think we pay for our media meals, they're not free.
How much of the blame do you think Carey Price should shoulder for the team's success or lack of success this season?
I don't think anybody would argue that he was great this year. He put up his worst numbers in his 10 years as an NHL goaltender and even going back to junior. But I would give him about 5% of the blame because if he had the NHL's best save percentage over .930, this team wasn't going to make the playoffs. And I'm confident about that statement. They just did not. They couldn't. How many games? The 26 games where they scored a goal or less, which Stu was asking Carey Price directly about, and they couldn't score goals. They couldn't defend worth anything. Their defense was the worst addition of the Montreal Canadiens defense in the history of the team. They have always been known for having good defense, and even in those dark years, early 2000s, late 90s, their defense was never as bad as that addition of the defense.
I'm going to give him a lot more blame than you do because I think he's supposed to be their best player. He wasn't their best player. He's paid a lot of money to cover up mistakes. He didn't do that. And back to the attitude thing, I think Carey Price's attitude might have been a problem in that room. We're not there behind closed doors, but when your top goal, with us is that his attitude wasn't good dealing with the media this year. He just didn't seem happy all season. And I think when he's the leader, I think that has a trickle-down effect during the room when guys look up to him. And if his attitude isn't good, I think a lot of the rest of the room's attitude isn't going to be good. And I wonder how much of that attitude thing was directed at Carey Price.
I just don't blame him for being discouraged with what he saw in front of him because it was so bad.
Yeah, but he is being paid to be the leader, and regardless of how much he's getting paid, he is the de facto leader of that team.
Well, and then Marc Bergevin brought up a point. He was sort of comparing his personality to Mario Lemieux, that these guys are not really much talkers, and that sometimes they don't realize that you're giving off a coldness or a little bit of a moody feeling, and that can rub off bad on some other people, and that's something he has to realize. So, I think if he had a little bit of a better attitude, it might have made things a little bit easier. But overall, I just think he's part of many issues that happened this year.
Well, and the leadership thing too, that last goal that he let in Toronto was that's a perfect sums up the season. And afterwards it was oh, well, I let it in. And I was thinking you'd almost expect him to smash his stick or something. And then on the other end of that, when you talk about leadership, you look at Brendan Gallagher, a guy who through this whole season never, ever, ever gave up. Never once gave less than 100% on any shift, anything. And I think that's, if you want to look at good attitude, Brendan Gallagher.
Yeah, talk about attitude. That's what Brendan Gallagher does best. What Carey Price does best is stop pucks. He didn't do that this year. All he has to concentrate on, I don't care about the other stuff, the stuff with the media. Yeah, it would be nice if we could have a better conversation with him once in a while. But honestly, all he should be working on this summer is getting his game back in order. And I'll give him the benefit of the doubt because for 4 or 5 years, he was the best goalie in the world.
Yeah, but vibes and energy. I bet you he was emitting bad vibes in that locker room. Okay, well, that is our show for this season. That's our show for today. We want to thank you all for tuning in. Despite the debacle it turned out to be for the Canadiens, I know that my colleagues and I had a great time doing the show, and a big reason was because of you, the fans at home. So we want to thank you for watching every week and commenting and complaining and debating, sometimes even complimenting. We appreciate it. You don't have to wait till next season to catch new episodes because we'll return for the draft and free agency during the summer. So check in with us then. And if you haven't already, subscribe to us on YouTube so you can be notified when we post something new. Also, join Hockey Inside Out on Facebook for breaking up-to-date news. On behalf of myself and everyone here at Hockey Inside Out, we wish you a fun and safe summer. I'm Adam Susser, and I'll see you soon.